There we go. Good morning, everyone. Lori, I'm going to give it a couple of seconds while everyone starts coming in. You know, the numbers are just going to start jumping. So good
Yes,
morning to you. Nice to see you.
Lauren. It's always wonderful to see you as well. And good morning, our frequent flyers. Where's Emma this morning? That's my usual. Where's Emma? I don't see Emma in the chat. I just think, am I really here or am I on the wrong day?
You know, she'll be jumping on soon. So
Absolutely. So thank you all our frequent flyers for being here and all our new guests. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Lauren, I'll let you go ahead and start kicking it off.
yeah, let's do it. So as everyone continues to come in, good morning to you. Love having you join us, especially to our frequent flyers. Thank you for coming back week after week after week. Lori, we're at our 44th or 45th show. So this is super exciting.
Knew it was coming up. I know it's amazing, from idea, and it's the audience that's allow us to continue to be here. So I really shout out to them once again.
That's right. So since we have a show jam-packed, I am going to go ahead and jump into the introduction while everyone continues to come in. So good morning again. My name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. Now, our services are at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of all of our fees. For the Los Angeles network, we represent, you can see the centers in front of you on this map, actually, but we represent the counties of Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura. So if you dwell in any of those counties, please be sure to reach out to one of our centers for some assistance. Again, we offer no-cost business advising. And so you're able to meet one-on-one with incredible advisors, experts in various fields, as well as our guru of all numbers, Ms. Lori Williams. And we also offer virtual trainings, much like the training you've joined today. So again, we're here to help. Please get in contact with us today. We'd love to speak with you and assist you along your entrepreneurial journeys. For the LA area, go to 866-588-7232. For those of you who would like to reach out to us online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you're outside of our network, please go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. With that, Lori, I'm going to quickly, let me stop my share. And then quick housekeeping, any questions, let's put those into the Q&A. Questions, Q&A. Chat is our party. So chat's going to be where we're conversing regarding the topics. I'll be sharing some information with you related to how you can get in contact with us, with Lori, as well as view our previous shows. And then Lori, of course, is going to provide some links for you all to take a look at. So with that, Lori, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Perfect. And speaking of links, let's get started. I got a whole bunch of upcoming webinars. So I have my financial literacy series. October 18th is the next one. And this is where many of you frequent flyers have seen me before, where I use an Excel document. And I just kind of start with a somewhat blank Excel document. Well, this class goes through what's the minimum that you must know, what's the minimum financial calculations and understanding that you must know. And then October 25th is a little bit more deeper dive into it, and it gives you performance measurements and additional calculations. I also brought back and added and kind of changed a legal structure. A couple, I don't know, I think it was 2 or 3 shows ago, we had Anna on, and she talked about how she had started an LLC with a certain belief that was not actually true. I keep running into it more and more, especially regarding beliefs on these different legal structures and taxation. So I started a webinar where I'm just going to go over a sole prop, an LLC, and an S corporation. I'm going to focus on those 3, but I'm going to talk about how do you structure them, what you need to consider, whether you should be either or, and what tax situations are specific to each. Now, as far as upcoming classes, next week I've got Jennifer, who is another referral from our love Deborah Darris. She's going to talk about mindfully crafted small batch food. She has a really interesting company and a really interesting business model. The week after that, Abby's coming back on. Several of your frequent flyers remember seeing Abby. She's an herbalist that formulated a whole bunch of tinctures and teas, etc. When she was on the show the last time, she spoke about a new product she had for furry friends, and that product has taken off. Abby's been at this game for a couple years now, and this last rendition, she really got it together. She got a marketing campaign together, a cold calling campaign together. She said she thinks she finally landed it. I asked her to come back on and talk about it because I think it's a great experience of what she did differently this time compared to the last. And then on November 9th, Jules Martinez is coming on Hertz. She is talking about basically business and how to manage your mental, as well as how to determine how to react and get involved in negotiations and all the different things. And I like her statement. It's not about being perfect. It's knowing what to do in any situation. And then I've got some other guests that are lined up. I'll be announcing them soon. But speaking of furry friends, let's start out with the show today. Now, first of all, I have to say, everybody knows I always talk about my cat in the stroller and all this. And I love my cat. I love all animals. I love dogs too. And today is my being equal to the dog lovers. So Dog is Good is a really interesting company. It's a lifestyle brand for dog lovers. The company creates original messaging and designs for a broad array of products to celebrate and share the unique joy one feels living with a dog. The company's success lies in its ability to deliver messaging that resonates with dog lovers. With clever and poignant sentiments, they remind us all how great it feels to be with a dog. I'm excited to have John on the show, as his story, I'm just going to say, it's filled with all the aspects that entrepreneurs face. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hello. First of all, as I read the intro, they get somewhat of an idea, but not really. So start out. Tell us about Dog is Good. What does your company do? How did you come up with the idea? Start us with a background, John.
Yeah, I'll start with, first the earth cooled, right? So going back a bunch, probably to around 2005, and we weren't living even in California then, and I was still active duty Navy. Ultimately, I retired here in California as a captain, but we just noticed, and to back up, my wife was doing dog trainings, just really accomplished dog trainer actually, and it was a good occupation because we moved so frequently. But we were in Washington, and we just kind of noticed, we're kind of on the periphery of the pet industry in general, but two things. Dogs in particular were kind of going through this humanization process through the 90s, and then, things started to accelerate. I don't know if it was, some of the economic dips or whatever, but, we started seeing dog mom and dog dad and pet parents and all those kinds of things. And then we started seeing people in the industry who are doing things in the industry that were making money that kind of had like no business making money. I mean, it was just nuts. It was taking off. And what we saw, because we didn't really understand the pet industry and pet products and that sort of thing, but we did know that nobody was really doing anything for dog lovers. Everything was about the pet. I thought, well, shoot, if you could own the dog lover, then you could own, the business to the pet ultimately as well. The pet's not doing the buying. But, we're enthusiasts, we love our pets. We get it. We get how emotional the attachment is. And wow, what a great space to be in. And I'm kind of a word nerd, and my wife is highly energetic. And we thought, well, let's just try something. So we came up with some ideas, and then shelved that for a couple of years because real life got in the way, and we moved and that sort of thing. But we did manage to come up with a couple of products, came up with the name Dog is Good, and still didn't really know what we wanted to do. It was kind of hard to nail down, what are we? We moved to California in 2006, and I guess it was about a year later, we started coming up with some products, and we were selling at events. Hey, what works? What messaging works? What kind of look are we going for? And we didn't know what we were doing, but people liked what we were doing. And of course, the economy prior to 2008, I guess 2009, the economy was good, so people were buying stuff. But we sat down with a marketing guy. It took us a year. He was with SCORE, kind of a competitor, so to speak, of SBDC, Service Corps Retired Executives, which is very active in Orange County. And it took us a year to get an appointment with this marketing guru that was working with them. And he said, it looks to me like you guys are a t-shirt company. We're like, we are not just a t-shirt company. We got this, this, and this. He goes, well, you need to figure it out. And what's going to make you different? Because right now you don't really have a brand yet. You got a name, but you don't have a brand. And it struck us on the way home driving. It was like, it was kind of like disappointing. It was, stomachache time. It was like, oh my God, I don't know, what do we need to do? And true story, we were driving back on PCH on Pacific Coast Highway from like Dana Point, where we met the guru at his favorite Starbucks in his favorite seat, and where we would meet a year later, almost to the day, because it took us another year to get an appointment with him. But we pulled up, we were at a stoplight, and there's this guy in his car in a convertible, and they're at the light, and there's a dog in the front seat, and they look at each other. And there was a connection. It was like, whoa, this is what we're about. I mean, it was like, figure the chance. So we figured it out on that day that we have to be about that dog human connection, and our messaging has to be spot on. And if we can nail that, we can put that on anything, right?
Right.
Because a physical product is just conveying a message. So, we came up with a lot of poignant things, but not cheesy, economizing on words shows thoughtfulness and leaves things to, there's just kind of a little bit of a science behind it in a way. And that we do that identifies us when people are like, oh yeah, that's a dog is good product. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what? There's so many things to unpack, things that you said. There's just so many wonderful things. But one of the things that struck me at the very beginning, when you were speaking about the money that was starting to be spent on pets, you actually took me back many, many years ago to my MBA, which also was an international study, right? I went to China and I went to Thailand. And when I went to Thailand, there was this now we're talking probably 10, 15 years ago, I'm not even sure. But there was entire discussion how in Thailand, all of a sudden you started seeing like the really cute collars that you would see here, different bright collars. And they were saying that you could tell that Thailand had got to a certain economic means because they were now showing wealth in their pets. And it was almost a symbol. Look at my pet's got the nicest collar, my pet's got that, etc. But I think you're so dead on about the relationship with, in fact, when somebody says you're a pet to me, it's almost like an insult. Like, no, my cat's not my pet. This is my child, my love of my life. It's like, don't be calling my cat a pet. There's this bond and there's this relationship. And what I find fascinating, and this is where I'm going to go full circle, so many people find themselves in a space where if you are competing as a t-shirt company, as you expressed, you said it and you also showed it in your face, you don't have anything. You're just another t-shirt company. But when you take the marketing and you become something, you become a brand, suddenly it's no longer a t-shirt company. It's an emotion that people get. So you moved from being a product, creating a product, a t-shirt people wear, to creating an emotion that people get. Now, I remember something when I talked with you some time ago that I thought was really phenomenal. And if we can, John, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I want to talk about how you sell and distribute your product. We're going to get back into production and some of the things, but I think what you have is unique, not only on how you're positioning it to the customer, but how you're distributing, because you're creating an emotion technically in your distribution channels as well. I'll let you take it from there, John.
Yeah, and there's something actually in there that I if I can remember, I'll circle back on a little bit. So, as I alluded to early, we didn't know what we were doing. neither of us had a background in this, and I'd like to have a lot of those first few years to do over again. But I think the thing that we did right is we didn't have such hubris that we were like, this is it, this is great, let's do whatever. Websites weren't so easy in 2007, 2008 by any means, and Facebook wasn't really a place to find people at that point. I think it was still MySpace, but we started selling at events, and every event is a focus group. So we would go to the small local dog walk charity event, and then we go to, ultimately bigger and bigger things. And we'd get feedback and we'd see what worked. And we didn't buy huge amounts. We didn't expect to make good margin on anything, when you're only running, because we started with hats and ball caps, and when you're just running, a few dozen at a time, you're not going to make any money. It's really, everything is a test. And then as we gained confidence and came up with more ideas, we branched out. One of the things we did early on was a line of greeting cards, which started small, and then that grew. And we didn't even know there was such a thing as the Louis Award, but it was a big deal in the greeting card industry. And we kind of found out about it, paid $75 to apply, and we won like national recognition with a greeting card that we did. But yeah, selling at events. And right now, our sales channels, we sell wholesale into retail stores. That's probably still our biggest revenue driver. But we also started a program based on our ability to sell at events. We started bringing people on as independent entrepreneurs, where we have a wholesale retail relationship. This is not a franchise. This is not a business opportunity. We work with them. We've kind of created, a social group and this, but we would provide the same help to retail stores if they asked for it. So these people, they buy wholesale and they sell retail, and they sell at events, or they'll put stuff in pop-up shops. How a lot of places they're just abandoned retail stores or small spaces, and your stuff's permanently on display. So we show them how they can buy our product and sell our product, and some of them have been doing it for years now, and some move some pretty good volume. And now we advertise and we recruit for this. And right now, it's a very busy time. A lot of people are looking to make extra money and whatnot. So, and actually, my wife and I are also showing people how to do this, kind of as kind of in beta right now. If somebody says, "Hey, I want to learn how to sell at events," and have other people do it. It's not something you just say, "Here, buy and sell." You got to talk to them about protecting your intellectual property, what they can and can't do, about insurance requirements, how to find shows, all this stuff to help. You have to help them be successful. So, it took us a while to figure it out, actually. And so now we can provide that as a service. So on the wholesale side, we've got the retail stores, we've got the exhibitors / pop-ups. We have Dogvergnügen.com. We have an Amazon store, and we also license the brand. So we actually have a couple of dozen licensees who just, whatever manufacturing they do, they apply our art and messaging. And everything from puppy pee pads to shower curtains are out there with our designs. And as I look at my shelf here, there's, my gosh, all kinds of things, Post-it notes and dog supplies. Sketcher shoes licensed a couple designs a couple years ago. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, air fresheners, automotive accessories, that sort of thing.
Wow, John, you really have gotten to the entrepreneur's dream to the point of even licensing your brand. And, I have to say, when you started talking about the dates of when you started, I knew you've been around for a while, but you've been at this for some time. It takes a while. One of the things, Lauren, please put this in the chat. Every event is a focus group. John, that was really a great statement, because a lot of times people are doing pop-ups now, but they're not being conscious of the fact that this should be a focus group. They get ego and emotion, and when somebody says something they don't like, instead of opening their mind and saying, well, what don't you like, they get defensive, I guess is a word. And I get it, we're scared, we're out there, we're doing that, but I think that your words that every event is a focus group is just brilliant in really having people redirect that. And another aspect I wanted to mention is that you talked about starting small, and so many people want to jump out of the gate and be everywhere and invest invest their whole savings and all this. And I say, that's no time for feedback loop. That's no time for mistakes. So I love it that you said that. And working with the other entrepreneurs creating the pop-ups, one of the questions I have is, do you find that these are individuals that are just representing your products, or they're already doing pop-ups and they're bringing other products in? What's the individual? Because I can see where there's somebody that would love to do a pop-up, but maybe they don't have a product. So I can see where they want to do that. And that's one of the aspects on that. And the second is, you mentioned it slightly. I know that from working with manufacturers that have distributors, you've got to have a certain level of control over the price, control over the representation. So can you speak a little more to that? Because a lot of times people are looking for other partners, but they don't realize they can't just let them, as an old statement, run amok. So that's my two things: is is the impetus of people wanting to come in and represent at a pop-up? Are this their first gig, and how much do you have to control? And is this a good choice for other people to go that perhaps have products that wants to look for distribution channels, the good, bad, and the ugly of that channel?
Yeah, couple of things, several things actually. It runs the gamut. We've got people who already are doing something,
okay,
right? And then it's like, oh my gosh, here's a brand that, and they want to add it. I would say most people are not doing anything yet already.
okay.
We're at a point though where in the dog space, in the pet space, the brand is recognizable. And so we run these ads now on Facebook, and people fill out a form, and they, a lot of them, they already know the brand, whether they bought from us or not. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know you guys are even doing this. So it runs a spectrum. If somebody comes on board and they say, yeah, I want to do a Dogs Good pop-up shop, we're not going to tell them you can't carry other products,
okay,
right? The primary, well, there's two reasons. Number one, if somebody's in Bismarck, North Dakota or something, I'm not going to visit them. I'm not going to know. The other thing is, we don't make everything, right? So we don't make dog toys. We've got some licensees that do dog toys. So we'll say, hey, buy from our licensee, so you can at least have a Dog is Good branded thing. But otherwise, we also don't want to have too much control, because we don't want to be accused of being a franchise, right?
Yep.
Or being a business opportunity,
right?
Because there's different legalities. If you're right, we want to maintain that wholesale to retail relationship. So we'll coach them and say, hey, you should have some branded tablecloths or a branded tent, or you're gonna need a nice pop-up. You might as well get one that's branded. And we're like, here's a vendor that has all the artwork. You don't need to tell us. You don't need to call us. We don't do anything with this vendor. We don't make a dime. If you want decorated, fixtures, go to this guy because he's got the artwork and we've authorized him to do it, right? So we're staying hands off in that regard. As far as pricing, we've got wholesale pricing, and just like the store, it's MSRP.
Okay.
There's some people will sell at events and they'll sell for over the MSRP. Maybe they want to include the sales tax in, or maybe it was an expensive show or it's in a higher income area. Who knows? And other people might want to bundle products and sell at a discount. It's entirely up to them.
That makes sense. I think it's really interesting because I've watched pop-ups, as you have as well, evolve over the last decade to where they've become a main component of the new entrepreneurs with their products, et cetera. It's, it was the farmers market and the flea markets. Now it's the pop-ups and events, and I see that continuing. That's why I think that is so fascinating. Now, with your company, it's evolved so much over that long time frame is what I meant to say. Tell us a little bit about, and I'm just going to say the word infrastructure, John. What I'm wanting our audience to understand is you might start out not having perhaps a certain person disciplined and dedicated. I'm just going to say accounting just to say something. I don't want to put any words in your mouth. But what happens is over the time period, your company has to grow in infrastructure or partners or relationships to support all of these aspects as you go along. And that can be the break or make for many companies, whether they get the right people, the right partners and stuff. So you have to spend as much time working on that, in my experiences working with companies, as building the brand. So can you tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts, without getting specific, but what entrepreneurs need to be aware of? My words today are going to be the good, bad, and ugly, John, because you're so experienced and have so much knowledge to share. So give us the good, bad, and ugly on internal growth.
Okay, so you've got the right person if you want it to be a reality show here, because it's hard. That part is really hard. And personnel, it's the most expensive part of your business, typically. Bad hires, you might think it doesn't cost you a lot, and maybe it doesn't in terms of dollars. Well, I only kept this person around for 3 weeks. Then when you decided, yeah, but there's a lot of other costs involved in that, of having gotten things wrong. We struggle with that still, with finding the right people. Typically, what we end up doing is really, it's the who do you know game with people that we know. It depends on the position. When you're small and you lose someone for whatever reason, it's painful.
Yeah.
And, we're still at the point where, with the exception of our, bookkeeping and accounting, we can still swoop in and do whatever needs to be done. My wife and I deal.
Yeah.
So maybe not as well, like our customer service, we've got a gal in customer service, Kelly, and she's like awesome. I mean, she just lives dog is good, and the exhibitors love her, and the stores love her. And she'd be very difficult to replace. She's been with us now for a few years, and with all these processes and everything, all these online things, somebody's got to learn all that stuff. But that's the hardest thing to do. And early on, we'd get real excited about a prospect, and then it didn't work out or whatever. And, you're going to burn through a lot of candidates as you're looking for people. But typically, it's nice to say hire before you need someone, but that's an expensive proposition. Yeah. You've got to have faith in your business, but you also have to throw a heavy dose of realism in there. And I kind of look at it as when someone gets to the point where they're at like 125 or 150% capacity, okay, they need an assistant or we need a new hire for a new position, right? And then when you lose someone, you gotta figure out how to fill in. It's nice to say, well, we cross-train all our employees. Yeah, but that doesn't give them more time to take up the slack. Right. So it's something you always have to be aware of and not take for granted, that someone's not going to leave all of a sudden. They leave for, they could be, just great employees. Well, my last child just graduated high school and now I have no need to hang around and work for you guys. So I'm out of here.
Yeah. And I used to, not to be morbid, I always used to talk with my private clients that I would come on board with, is you always got to figure that one of your employees could get hit by a bus, because otherwise you get too dependent on one person. And if one person means the elimination of the company, you're vulnerable. So I'm going to ask you to comment on two things on what you learned. And these are two things that was kind of my speech that I would give in companies. And one was, you always have to have some kind of recorded processes. You need some kind of manual. And I even say, even for myself with, listing my ebooks and stuff, I have a manual of where I upload it, how I upload it, because you got to know to be consistent and efficient within the company. But in case something happens, you grow quickly, it could be a positive, or somebody, disappears for some reason, you've got a manual for training. And then the other aspect that I always used to tell companies, I see this more in small companies, I don't see it in larger ones, is they get where they waited past the point. I love your 120, 150%, fully agree. They wait for 200% and then they do an emotional hire. They just want to get somebody in. They go, I just need somebody in. And you were so dead on. The time it takes, because usually it's business owners that are doing part of the training, and the time it takes you from doing successful things.
Yes.
I always used to say, we've got to interview people several different times, have other people interview them. Don't get back from the emotion, see them on more than one day. So just, in relationship to that, did you note that you had to have internal processes and documentation? And have you learned over the time a better process for interviewing than maybe you had when you first started?
Yeah, a couple questions in there. One about process in general, and then more specifically about hiring. I can't say that we have we kind of have an ad hoc hiring process. There's all these different techniques and this and that, but you can hire for skills, you can hire for fit, personality. How does this person fit with the brand? And they're both important, but it's that attitude piece. The fit with the brand where, you have an attitude. We have, we're high energy here. We're, we've got there's certain characteristics, and that's probably most, depending on the position you're hiring for, some people you hire and they're going to do rote things, or they're just going to follow processes that are well-defined. And then there's others where you're hiring them for judgment. Right. They're going to have to make decisions based on experience in the field. And, those are higher level hires. Yeah. But you know what? Your lead customer service in a small company, they have a lot of judgment calls. You can't be doing that all day. Can I do this? Can I do that? No, here's your, gross parameters, figure it out and communicate that to the customer. So there's different kinds of hires. I like what you said about, you get to a point and then you just make an emotional hire, and then, you're usually wrong. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And, I've read the books and this and that, and it ends up being, we want someone with a great attitude that has aptitude to learn the process. The back office, we use a very complex and capable back office system called NetSuite. And, it's somebody that have to show the aptitude to be able to use it. Younger people now that are, younger, 30s, even, now that I'm, over 60, they'll generally pick it up. Right.
John, what I really like, and Lauren, put this in the chat, please. When they have to make a judgment call. I've never heard it expressed just like that. And that is beautiful because, like you said, a customer, people think judgment, they're in the high, C-suite, a customer service person has to make a judgment call. And I think identifying whether the person you're hiring is going to have to make independent judgments based on a parameter is so crucial, because it talks about their thinking process. That's really, really important. One of the people in the audience asked if you recommend a resource automation for your SOPs. You had mentioned NetSuite. And I was actually I'm asking this question and throwing mine in because are you using, and it's a curiosity about how NetSuite's working. Are you using it for your ordering as well as your accounting? We don't get too many people to talk about NetSuite. So please talk a little bit about how that's working and what you're using it for and why you chose that.
Yeah, this is a day-long discussion, really. We didn't start with NetSuite, obviously, but at the time, and this is back in 2012, the web store didn't talk to QuickBooks, and, inventory was on a spreadsheet, and, it's just a mess. And there wasn't really a whole lot out there, and nothing in the cloud except for NetSuite at the time. And I didn't want to pay that much money. But then I saw that, I could get wholesale orders, I could have 150 different SKUs, and hand jamming those, you just introduce errors all the time. So I thought, that'll save me, like 20 hours of customer service time right there. That's worth something. And it was like, yeah, so it's going to be, so it's an ERP. It's everything. It's everything. It's every process that we need at this point, for the most part, because now there's so many software, SaaS, software as a service out there in all the marketing things and, add-ons to the websites and, things that now integrate, like we sell on Amazon, it integrates with NetSuite and all of these things going on. But regardless which you use, you have to document the processes.
Yeah.
And that was something you brought up earlier. We have a lot of documented processes, a lot of them. And okay, so for those who don't have anything written down, first off, make the time to document your processes.
So true. Lauren, be putting this in the chat. This is so important, John. Keep going.
And here's how. Now there's online tools that you can subscribe to, and it can lay it all, you can have a format and do it that way. And that's great, especially if it helps you do it. I wish those were around when we started, but it's not that way. So I would say the way to start is select your 5 major processes in your business and start there, step by step, throw in screenshots, right? So let's call one major process order to cash. From when you get an order, whether it's a wholesale order, a retail order, these are all going to be different, right?
Right.
To how does it get into your system? What's the fulfillment process, right? Because now that's a whole other one. How do you pick, pack, and ship? How do you use your shipping software if that's not native to the system that you're using, right? All of these are individual processes. And then you send an invoice or it's a cash sale and you run that through. However, that's another process, right?
Yep.
And then on the accounting side, what do you do? How are you going to get that credit card payment or that ACH payment? How does that show up as cash in your system? That's another process, and that's another person. So you've got to document all these processes, because that whole thing is probably not one person in the company of anyone that's listening here, right?
Right.
Taking care of the order, maybe that person is also pick, pack, and shipping, but they're probably not doing the part all the way to the bank account, right? So if you lose somebody that's in those processes, what are you gonna do? It's got to be written down. So if you're starting from scratch, here's what I would do. For those who use Google Docs, create a table of contents, and you're gonna have, how orders come in kind of topic is gonna be your first one, let's say, right? And you're gonna have a hyperlink on that. It's gonna be like, here's the process name, here's the description, and it's going to be hyperlinked, so it takes you right to that process. Boom, you're in business, right? You're starting to create a document where all your processes are now in place. It can be as simple as that. And then you're going to get to a point with who's in charge of the process and who owns the process.
Yeah.
Right. So the person in charge is the one who's going to should be the one that makes sure the process is being followed. But that shouldn't necessarily be the owner. The owner of the process is the one who's going to authorize changes, because they know the other processes that are going to be affected if you make a change. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right?
It does, yes. And just, it's beautiful, John. And I want to say, to the audience, you can tell you've been at it a long time, because you cannot, and I tell people that what I see, and I've been at consulting for like 30 years, from small companies up to $100 million companies. So I've been in the CFO, and the thing that I see that stops companies from get to the next level, most people think it's funding and stuff. It's not having proper processes. And so then what happens is, as opportunity comes up, things get a mess. They can't predict things. They don't know. So everything's processes. And I want to, make sure that people heard the word screenshot. I have an S Corp, and so I do my own W salary once a year. And I have screenshots of exactly what it will take for me to go in and do all those government reports. And this is just me, because after I go to do it again, I don't remember. And then I have to rethink it, and rethinking is just problematic. And so having the screenshots really make a difference. And I think processes make a huge difference. And I'm always amazed. I have a private client I just took on that is getting near $1 million, and she does all this ordering from China China in her own head. She can't even tell me how much it costs to create a product. And I had to sit down and, like you said about a Google sheet, and I just want to add this part, I had to sit down on a Zoom call with a whiteboard and just get her to go through this with me to say, okay, you do what? Then what happens there? And I had to draw it out to get a PO system in place because she didn't even have a PO system.
Right.
And so she didn't even know if she was profitable or not. So, what you're saying is dead on. And I think that too many times the entrepreneurs focus on the aspects that are not the killers and don't even give any consideration into these because they think they're simple and they don't matter, but they matter.
Right, right. And that would be the other, the other major process, the procure to pay process, right? From how do you create a purchase order? How do you transmit the purchase order? What are the different shipping requirements that your customers have in terms of like retail stores? I mean, we've made sales into TJX, TJ Maxx, Marshall's, Home Goods, in the Canadian stores, they'll get their stuff picked up in China, the others get shipped here. It's like, oh my gosh, I need a master's degree to figure out their logistics and 16 phone calls to their help. Yeah, if all I do is jam that in a folder, then I got to relearn it again next time, So yeah, all these things, and the procure to pay and order to cash, you divvy those down, you just do a little bit at a time, give yourself a couple of months, do a process a week. It doesn't take that long when you got your mind on it, but it's that's how you can cross train.
And what's great is if you start at the beginning, I always say when it's a company of one, start your processes because then you can build on them from there. So let's walk a little bit into, I'd mentioned financing and accounting and funding and a couple areas on this. The one thing that strikes me, and I know this is true of every company, but you've probably got to really manage your cash flow because you've got wholesale, you got retail, you got the exhibitors. They all have different payments. They got all different terms. You got a million things going on with cash flow. So one of the things that I try to get the audience to understand, John, the bank balance online is not their cash flow. Okay.
Right.
You don't just click into your bank balance and say, I'm managing my cash flow, number one. Number two, so many people think I'm just going to walk in a bank and tell them my idea and they're going to give me some funding. So,
Right.
Can you bring some reality, some hardcore reality into cash flow, financing, funding, company growth, and all that? Good, bad, and ugly again on your end, John.
Yeah, I don't know where to start with that. I will say, yeah, cash flow is that's kind of the backbone of your business. And yeah, it's not what's in the bank. And in fact, my bookkeeper, I started just a daily cash flow thing for near term, right? Start with the bank balance. Here's all the money that's coming in the next day from our credit card. So this is what I should see in the bank tomorrow. Here's all the payments that need to go out. And here's all the, it's just taken off our AP list, basically, which is all, it's all in NetSuite or QuickBooks usually, it's all in there. But if you can't really look at that, you've got to see kind of a date thing. Some people can just do it on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis. If you have that much cash, hey, great.
Right.
But a lot of times when you've got big payments outstanding, or you've got a really big customer and you're waiting on that check to come in, you've got to see it visually, however you need to do that. As far as and then the other thing was about access to capital and getting loans, and this is where SBDC can really be a big help. And someone I worked with at SBDC was a big help to me in getting a loan. It's not easy. It depends how much you need, but it's also going to depend on the means you have to pay it back if things head south. It's not, hey, I've got a great idea. That helps, but what's your track record? And you might just have to start off with friends and family.
Friends, family, and fools, we always called it when I was a banker.
Yeah. So yeah, it's quite a process. So I got an SBA loan, and it was with help from SBDC, and it was challenging. I mean, there's all these, we had been doing other lending things, but there's all these financial tech companies out there right now, and they've got some really creative things that are very helpful. And those really started to proliferate, I'd say about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And we had a number of those going on where we could borrow to purchase inventory and pay it back on a schedule. We could spread it out over 6 months if we wanted to, right?
Yeah.
And the people evaluating your finances were just clueless about all these fintech companies and how they work. And it was, the amount of documentation was just unbelievable. It was exhausting.
That's what people don't realize. I have another advisor on that's also in charge of the access to capital team, and I have him come on just talking about the documentation and the need to have your documents accurate. So you're supporting what I had him on just a couple of weeks ago or so, what he was saying.
Yeah. And I mean, trying to use clean language here. It's got to be a gnat's behind, right? Kind of thing. It's like, I'm looking at this list, but it doesn't match the debt schedule that you gave me that lists everything, because this one's off by $100. I'm like, it changes daily. What do you want from me? It was just nuts. And he was going crazy because he didn't understand all these other financial products out there that were very creative. And Brett, who I worked with at SBDC, he was getting frustrated too. He's like, you just got to understand, they don't see this. You're piecing all this together, it's like sophisticated compared to what's coming at them on a daily basis.
And then they get nervous because they can't figure out cash flow and all that. And they, bankers, like I said, being a banker, we're skittish. The minute we don't understand something, we want to go, okay, no, hands off. And then it's up to the person and the banker that's helping them to get the people to get comfortable with what's going on. That's the word they use in banking, actually, to get comfortable with it.
Right.
I can see that. Somebody from the audience, and I'm going to answer a little bit so they make sure they have a clear understanding, then I'll let you go with it. What persuaded you to accept help and assistance from the SBDC? So the first thing I want to say is, at the SBDC, just for clarity, the assistance we give is helping to package, meaning help you go through the forms, help you get your numbers in place, help you get the loan package, and then make an introduction to the banker and communicate a little bit back and forth to make sure the language is exact. The SBDC doesn't do any lending. So I just wanted to say that for clarity, John, and then I'll hand it to you to answer what persuaded you to get involved with the SBDC to get assistance in this manner.
Yeah, so I didn't really know much about SBDC, and then I did that 10,000 small businesses program. Okay. Yeah, that was a few years ago. And I guess I didn't realize how robust a program SBDC was. All I knew was SCORE, because SCORE is really big in Orange County and SBDC is really big in LA County. And yeah, so when I started learning the capabilities, it was interesting. And then the one, Brett in particular, I had an introduction to him, and he just knew a lot of people to go to. I could have gone straight to a bank, but you know what? And one of the points I wanted to bring up here, just in general overall, and this is a good time, I guess, to bring it up. If I was one takeaway would be, it's about learning to ask better questions. I mean, isn't that kind of like the essence of life? It's just asking better questions of yourself, of other people, and being thoughtful. And yet we do things and then we don't think to ask good questions. We tend to do it ourselves, which was a major shortcoming of me, and particularly with my last, my previous life, 28 years as a naval officer, where you don't want to ask for help. That's weakness, right? And you're out at sea and there is no one to ask. You're the captain, right? So you learn to be very self-sufficient and make decisions and whatever. And I took that with me into this whole endeavor. And it took me a few years to find out that, the shortest distance between point A and point B is a good question.
I agree. No, I just speaking on that on the show, I think last week or the week before, I called it the power of questions.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
questions are the most important aspect because the answers will evolve. It's asking the right questions. And you see so many times with a business owner, they're focusing over here, but they never go, well, why is this occurring? They're into the
Right.
solution instead of asking maybe, well, why is this occurring? Has it occurred before?
Yeah. So to distill that down, I would say the better question is not what shall I do, but who shall I ask?
Yes.
Right. And having resources to go to, and face it, I mean, everybody that's probably on this call and most people who are building businesses are, we get it that people need, we're eager to share.
Yeah.
Right. We get a lot of benefit out of sharing.
Yeah.
So yeah, not what shall I do, but who shall I ask is kind of what I distilled that down to several years ago.
Good takeaway. Now, John, I know you've got an appointment to jump on, so
Right.
I know that you've got to leave. So I just want to say a warm thank you, and I want to let you know that the chat was going crazy the whole time, agreeing, good point, thank you. You don't see that, but they were going crazy in appreciation. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on. You just have so much wisdom and sharing. So maybe there's another point down the road you'll be a guest again. We would love to.
Yeah, of course, be happy to help. I mean, what goes around comes around, and certainly rising tide lifts all boats. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing today, and good luck. Very good luck. Dog is Good has come a long time since I even seen you, so who knows where you'll be next time we speak. So keep growing the brand and doing what you do so well.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Bye-bye. Well, Lauren, I just want to say I'm amazed. I interviewed John for SBDC, and we were talking at the beginning of the show. I've been around with SBDC for a long time, and I would do a lot of writing for the success stories. So it's probably been a good 10 years ago, and he's evolved so much even since then. But I am so happy we were able to get him to come on the show today, because tidbits of information. So everybody in the audience, I hope you saw that it's a process. It's a long process. It's got such great, wonderful payoffs, but it's also something that you just have to take your time and put everything in place. It's like the building blocks. You can't build the top without building the foundation first. And I think that's one of the great entrepreneur lessons for today.
I love it, Lori. Like, it was, like you said, having these conversations, it's almost like we're kind of peeking into a private conversation, but just the variety of guests, John, even today, his authenticity just really, shine through, and it's just so relatable as well. So I love it.
About a year ago, I guess it was, when I first said I want to do this Small Biz Talk, my whole thing, it was real people, real guests, real situations. I wanted no Hollywood. And, I know that somebody in the audience can relate, where you're watching one of these talk shows and it seems like they were an overnight success and you have no clues how they got there. And it's so frustrating and disheartening. And so I wanted people to know, hey, there's someone that's walked in their shoes. They're walking right along with you. They've experienced it. They've gone through it. You're going through it, go from there.
Yeah.
Well, if there's, and we got a few minutes, if anybody has any questions they want to throw in to ask Lori, I will end a little bit early, but if anybody has any questions, I will be glad to answer them. One of the things I was thinking about this, and I didn't want to say it at the beginning because I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for John, but I got to say a thought I had the other day, Lauren, that I wanted to share with everybody. Okay. And it's kind of twofold, and it's really, I'll tell you where it came about. It came about from some of these discussions I'm having with people jumping into LLCs and jumping into things, not really realizing, that this is not really true and that's not true and everything from there. And I was thinking to myself, because I'm always trying to make sure that when I'm being very strong in my words, like don't do this until you know what you're doing, I am not taking away empowerment from being the do-it-yourself, because I am the do-it-yourself person. I always say, there's things to do it yourself, but don't do legal and don't do this. Right? I wanted to come back and I wanted to talk on that comment. So I'm going to use the couple minutes we have to talk on it. And like I said, I will jump in and Lauren, you've seen me out there with power tools. She's like, I just got done with my power tool. Something broke on my Jeep and I just fixed it. I mean, I'm crazy do it yourself. I'll watch a YouTube video. I don't care what it is. So I am also a do it yourself on a lot of things I don't understand in business, but I want to make 2 points. When you want to do something without incorporating information from maybe hiring a CPA or an enrolled agent or hiring a lawyer, what have you, you can do it. But what you have to do is, one, you have to make sure you invest the time to educate yourself thoroughly. Number 2, you have to make sure where you're getting the source of information. And so I want to talk about number 2. I think where problems come in is so much finance and legal information people are getting off of Google and whatever comes up, somebody's blog, somebody said this person's got a cool company. That does not mean, and I've talked on this subject from entrepreneurs for years, way before Google existed, you don't know if that person really has expertise in that area that may have applied to them, that may apply to their situation, or they may not know what they're talking about. So a good rule of thumb, and I always say, if anybody spoke with me on person, you've heard me say, go to the horse's mouth. And I'm saying, go to the government webpage. If you want to incorporate on your own, go to the sos.gov and look up the business forms, look up what to do for being an LLC, go to the IRS page. These government pages, they're challenging to get through. I'm not going to say they're easy peasy, but they do have some plain language. I think over the last 10 years with more entrepreneurs, they've gotten where they speak more clearly on their page. So if you're going to engage in finance and legal actions without having an assistance from somebody that's a professional, make sure you don't get your information from other blogs, etc. Go to the web page, because if you go to a government's web page and it says you must collect sales tax for this, you know the answer, and you could do a screenshot of that page and you can have it in your back pocket if you ever get audited. Too often you have one person posting wrong information, then another person posting that same information. And at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to save your butt is what's on the government webpage, because it's the government webpage that is the ultimate end-all authority. And then if you're going to get an expert to come in and assist you, I always try to get 3 opinions. I remember back when I was in my 20s, I was, doing something, and I had an employee at the time at my company, and I said something about, talking with somebody, and I talked with somebody else, and she goes, well, then we'll hold off till next week to make the decision. I said, well, why? And she goes, because you're going to get another one. And she said this to me, and she had picked up my inherent habitual ways of interviewing 3 people or asking 3 people all the time that I wasn't even aware of, Lauren. She picked it up. I was like, when she said that, I went, do I always get 3? And I would be like, I did here, I did here, I did here. And they always say 1's not enough information, 2's a dilemma, 3 gives you some choices, right? So no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm ripping something apart in my Jeep, whether I'm doing something legal, whether anything, I'm getting as close to the source of information I can, and I'm getting 3 opinions. So what I'm really saying is you got to back away and you've got to say, what is this logically answer. What you got to use your brain. You can't just take something off of Google and apply it as real. You've got to be, when you research anything, when you put something in the Google, I want you to think of yourself as a scientist and you're getting data collection. So when you read it, don't see it as an answer. Don't you go, well, how do I do this? Oh, there's the answer, and run out the door. See it as data collection. And then remember, at the end of the day, you got to use this thing up here, guys. You got to use this. Use this to think through the data you got, make an informed, intelligent, thought out decision. I think for many of us, the internet, especially in the different age groups, like John and I didn't have the internet, so we saw it as data points. I think those who grew up with the internet have gotten too trusting of it. They've gotten too much in a read and action. I want you to get some distance on these important aspects of legal and finance and consider it data points. So there you go. I just I found a way to end, but it was something I wanted to speak on for some time. So this gave me the opportunity. So with that, I want to thank everybody that was on the show that came to the show today, and we'll be back next week with another great session. And anything else before we end, Lauren?
No, that's it. Well, actually, yes, it's something that one of our listeners said. They said, thank you for your vision, Lori. And so thank you. Thank you for your vision. I'm excited to be a part of this journey with you. And it's been amazing. It's been so good.
It really has been. It's been fascinating. And, I thank you, Lauren, for coming with me. I remember when I first found out I called up Ted at the SBDC, and he said, Lauren could be my partner in crime on this. And I'm like, excellent. We're taking off on this. And it's been great. So anybody that has somebody that, if you want to be a guest on the show, please let us know. And as you know, from being a frequent flyer, you don't have to have some great success. It's where are you in the process? What are you experiencing? Or if you know anybody that you think would be a great show guest, please let us know. And once again, if you want to reach out to me for a one-on-one, hit up Lauren. She's got a way to get in touch with me at all times. Till then, Lauren, I will see you next week. To all our guests, thank you for joining, and I will see you next week as well. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lori. Thank you. All right, everyone. So be sure you collected any kind of information that you need in the chat, link to our previous shows, as well as how to get in contact with us. If you'd like to set a meeting with Lori, it's email l@simpson, so LSIMPSON at lbcc.edu. Had to remember my email address. Happy Wednesday to you all. We will see you next week, Wednesday, 10 a.m. for another great show. Take care. Bye.